How are we doing, Jets fans? I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. And of course, this time of year, especially the first couple weeks of training camp, the hottest threads you'll find on there are really the camp breakdowns from KRL. Kevin does a great job breaking down the day-to-day structure of not just the highlights, but he breaks down the length of practice, what the players were wearing, whether they were in shells, pads, um, full contact, no contact, all the details you would want, and then he goes into the highlights and his observations. Check it out. Like I said, jetnation.com. Go to the forums, look for the daily breakdowns from Kevin. Wanted to touch on a couple of topics real quick, just a short one for today, Sunday afternoon. Posted an article yesterday about Mekhi Becton. So Mekhi Becton, I know it's basically a bold prediction from Rich Samini. Nothing concrete, nothing. He's not hearing anything, rumors or anything like that. But the possible trade of Mekhi Becton before training camp closes out. Before week one, Brian Costello then went on WFAN and said he expects Billy Turner to be the starting right tackle. I don't know, honestly. I don't know if this is clickbait or not. I don't think it is. And the main reason, and I'm not saying I think Mekhi Becton is going to get traded. I'm saying that I think there's a better chance of it than there should be. Put it that way. Mekhi Becton, still on his rookie deal, with the talent he has shown, and I get it, the injuries, I know, we all know. But if you go back and look at what he did as a rookie, you look at the shape he's in now. He's down 20 pounds from his draft weight, let alone from the 400 pounds he was a couple years ago. But he's at 340, looking phenomenal. He's a player who should be untouchable. Not based on the last 2 years, but if you start the season with him, or even camp, if he looks in camp like the guy he was as a rookie, he should be just about untouchable. Premium player, premium position, still a young guy who can do things that not many guys in the NFL can do. But Samini saying he thinks the trade will happen. Costello says he won't start, doesn't think he'll start, which I would imagine would obviously not sit well with Becton. That could lead to a trade. But the reason why I think it's worth discussing and it's not as absurd as it should be is look at what happened with Elijah Moore last year. Elijah Moore, listen, say what you will about him as a person, phenomenal talent. And I don't listen. If you're going to tell me Elijah Moore didn't produce, then I know you're not watching the games. Well, you're not watching, the play to play, snap to snap breakdowns of the Jets playing on Sundays and how often Elijah Moore is wide open. His quarterback play was terrible. He didn't see targets if he was open. If he did see targets, they were off target, and he didn't have a chance to catch the ball. So he was right to be frustrated. I completely understand that. But where Elijah Moore hurt himself, and the reason I think he ended up getting dealt, and I've talked about this a million times, the fact that the Jets spent an entire offseason, entire preseason, entire however many weeks into the season with the mantra of positive vibes only, and then in the middle of a winning streak, Elijah Moore dumps water all over it because he's not putting up fantasy stats. That's why he was gone. So, supremely talented player who I would not be the least bit surprised if he blew up this year. If Elijah Moore dominated the season, I would not be not one tiny bit surprised. But he was still dealt because he really just not threw the team under the bus, but he showed he was more about him than the team after an entire offseason of the team talking about remaining positive. So that's why he had to go. Now, Mekhi Becton, I love Becton. I've supported him from the day he was drafted all through the injuries up until this very moment, but you can't not acknowledge the interview he did a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, whenever it was, where he really, really went after the team, saying that they didn't take care of me. I told them I was injured. They ignored me, and that's when the injury got worse, and I had to miss a full season. And he was lukewarm on the coaching staff. What's your relationship? It is what it is. So, like, Mekhi Becton really took the time to do a lengthy sit-down interview where he told the world that the reason he got hurt is because the Jets ignored his ignored him, his claims that he was not doing well and his knee wasn't holding up. I don't think people realize how big of a deal that is. That's a player publicly saying that his current employer potentially, I mean, definitely cost him last year, and now moving forward, I want the guy to be an All-Pro and dominate and be great. If he's not, is that something he's going to look back at and say, well, the reason I never got back to being the guy I was before was because they forced me to practice when I told them I couldn't, and now this is what derailed my career? As I said at the time, it almost sounds like laying the foundation for a lawsuit or for for a claim against the team for for his injury. So that's all that's not just he didn't just knock a coach. He didn't just come out and say I don't agree with a philosophy. He didn't come out and say I don't, I mean, he has commented on the left tackle thing. This wasn't about him just saying, like, I deserve to be the left tackle. This was telling the world that the organization caused him a major injury through negligence that could, from this point on, impact his career in a negative light. So when people kind of sweep that aside and treat it as if it's nothing, I think people are not understanding the impact of those comments. I don't know if Rich Samini specified that one incident, but I know he said that some people in the building weren't thrilled with Becton, and that's why he's predicting a possible trade. Again, he's not saying it's very likely. Again, it was a bold prediction, and it is a pretty bold prediction. But is it impossible? No. I don't. Again, I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying it's far more likely than it should be at this point. One more player I wanted to touch on before we wrap this up, because if you've been listening to this show for I don't know, going back as far as even just the combine. Prior to the NFL Combine, Dylan Terman and I did a show where we talked about players to watch at the Combine who the Jets could have interest in. Did an article on it. I've talked about him a few times. I listed Jason Brownlee, the receiver out of Mizzou. The Jets ended up getting him as an undrafted free agent. We heard Aaron Rodgers, pay him some compliments after OTAs, saying he was impressed with him. We're only a few days into camp, and I think I've seen Jason Brownlee's name already mentioned 3 or 4 times. Making a impressive catch, body control, keeping his feet in bounds, awareness of where he is on the field, spatial awareness, showing good hands, running good routes, being where he's supposed to be. A lot of praise very early on for Jason Brownlee. Now, this was a guy that I liked to have a chance to make the roster, and I said when the Jets signed him that he was going to be Denzel Mims' primary competition. Well, Denzel Mims is gone now. So Jason Brownlee, to me, is the undrafted free agent on the offensive side of the ball to really keep an eye on. There are others. Travis Dye, the running back. I think the running back room is crowded, but Dye, really good player. Go back and watch him at USC, watch him at Oregon. That dude can play. Super productive, all-around guy, catches it, runs it, can block a little bit. But Brownlee is the guy who I think has the chance to stick on this roster again. Already getting credit from Rodgers, tons of praise from the media. So Jason Brownlee, undrafted free agent out of Mizzou. Keep an eye on him moving forward. Check the front page of JetNation, JetNation.com. Put out an article the other day listing sort of 10 or 11 guys who are not the household names. These guys are the long shots, and what they offer. Those are 2 guys I mentioned, Brownlee and Dye. But there are other guys in there, folks, that you may not know about because maybe they didn't go to big schools. Maybe they haven't gotten a ton of press because they don't play a sexy position or whatever it may be. But there's some guys, some undrafted guys on this roster who have a chance to make it. It's going to be tougher than years past because there's more talent on the roster. But when you look at spots like linebacker, you look at spots like safety, where there's not a ton of depth. That's where these guys have a shot to stick, along with guys like Brownlee. So check it out, give it a look, keep up with camp. KRL, like I said, he's out there daily. Check out the forums at jetnation.com. Follow us on Twitter at jetnation. Follow me on Twitter at jnradio_Glenn. You can follow Dylan Terraman at @dterraman. And of course, Chris Schubert, you can follow him from the Draft Network. He does Thursday Night Live with Dylan Terraman. Check all of those out. Keep an eye on the Becton situation. Keep watching Jason Brownlee. See if that name keeps popping up as a guy who's making plays in camp. And I'm looking forward to, just watching these guys grow. Hall of Fame game is right around the corner. Season will be here before you know it, Jets fans. Have a good one.